Is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. I sound like Janet Reno, but it's all right. The show goes on. I fell asleep last night during the Stars game because I'm old, tired, and sick. And I was like, I'm in a pretty good spot. I have a Predators power play stack with Byfield and Kempe to go. Stars didn't really break the slate. Wake up. See, the Predators and the Kings got shut out. So here we are today, looking to hit the nuts after putting up back-to-back abysmal performances. But what's going on, Cliffy? Every time you wear that hoodie, I say I need to get one. I always forget, but what's going on?
Yeah, it's really warm. Not a whole lot. Yeah, I didn't do a whole lot, but I had the wrong Dallas line last night. I had the Marchman line, and it was the Robertson line that did a lot of the damage. So that's the way those things go on short slates. You have the nuts or you don't. 10 games ahead of us tonight. There's a lot of injury news across the slate. A lot of important injury news. So we'll touch on those as we get to it. Very interesting slate. You have Ottawa, it seems like a fairly sizable favorite at home to Vegas, which if you go back even a month in time, imagine telling yourself that in the middle of October or something. That's kind of interesting. We have San Jose on a back-to-back, but honestly not in a bad matchup, which is something that's also very interesting. We have Florida in the hammer spot of all hammer spots for a road matchup going into Chicago. So a few lopsided matchups, but I do think that there are basically things to play on both sides in virtually all those games. So I kind of like this slate. Excited to break it down.
Yeah. Benching Travis Hamonic is worth at least 50 cents. That would explain that. No, but back to back on the road. Sitting Hamonic is like a big deal, honestly. They might actually have three competent defensive pairs, but we'll get to that game when we get to that game. It is raining outside, so if one cloud, orange, red, I think we'll be okay. Let's get into this slate. Before we do, just wanted to say thank you again for all your support with the affiliate signups. Just being here, watching the shows, giving it a thumbs up. There's already over 100 of you in here. It's not even 5 minutes into the show. We do really appreciate it. If you want to go premium, click the link in the chat. Use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off your first week or month of any subscription. Let's get into this slate. Oh, no. Let's start. The Utah Soakers with a 2.5 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 3.1. There was a question in chat yesterday I didn't get to. And there's a guy who's just like, why do you guys call Utah the Soakers? And one, I refuse to call them hockey club. That's a ridiculous name, and I won't be doing that. Two, outside of skiing, there really isn't much to do in Utah if you're Mormon besides soak. And Jake loves the word soaker, so they're the Utah Soakers. And that's awful, but that's just how it is. Now let's get into this game. I don't really like Utah here. I just don't like these lines. I like Utah. I just don't like these lines. And new coaching change in Boston. They fired Jim Montgomery. The last three Jack Adams winners have been fired. Classic NHL there. But I don't know. Maybe they get the new coach bump tonight. Also, it's a small sample. They're still not great offensively, but Lindholm, Marchand, Brazeau have been very good defensively, and they've been taking, top competition. Not that Bukestad with Keller and Genther have been anything good, but I really just don't have a ton of interest in Utah here tonight. They have one of the lowest totals on the slate. In fact, the lowest road total. only Chicago with a smaller total. So I'm out on Utah. Boston takes a boatload of penalties. So, like, okay, like a one-off Keller or one-off Matthias Michelli, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, if you need like a cheap one-off, Michelli's fine. But I'm not going out of my way to get Utah on my line tonight. Boston's a bit more interesting here. Pasternak, Zacha, Geeky, 15,900, 7.9% top two stack, 12.6% projected ownership. Listen, they have a 3.1. It's kind of in, excuse me, for totals on this slate. They are cheap enough if you're building a mid-range build here. Again, like I'm going to sound like a broken record with Boston. I'm either doing some sort of Pasternak one-off or I'm doing some sort of power play stack like Zacha, Pasternak, Marchand, because this is a pretty good power play spot. I don't know if I'm going to get to Boston in single entry. There is a lot of stuff that I like. And according to my DMs, I am an notorious Boston hater. So I have to live up to my reputation, and I'm probably not going to get there in single entry. But again, I don't have issue with Pasternak one-off. I don't mind Zacha, Pasternak, Marchand for a power play stack. It is a very good power play spot. But again, I don't particularly love this game for single entry.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of interest in. I don't have any interest in Utah here. The only thing that would be kind of interesting, I guess, would be that Krause, Cooley, Michelli line, just because they are so cheap. They're 9,900. Krause and Michelli have generally played good together. Now that a lot of that has been with Nick Bjugstad in prior seasons, but Logan Cooley's a fine stand-in. But the only real case to play them would be: are you playing an expensive Colorado stack? Are you playing an expensive Tampa Bay stack? Are you playing expensive Edmonton, Minnesota? Like those types of things. Maybe you look at them, but the issue with Boston has been twofold generally this season. One, they've had trouble generating any quality offense. That's been the offensive problem. Defensively, it's been the penalty kill. I honestly have no idea what Utah is doing with their power play. They added Alex Kerfoot a couple weeks ago to the top power play unit, and the top power play unit wasn't good to start the season. Don't get me wrong. They were below average by goals per minute. Everything has gotten considerably worse since adding Alex Kerfoot to the top power play unit. Their shot rate is down 30%. And they're just like, you know what? Maybe Nick Schmaltz was the problem on the power play. And I'm like, guys, I think you kind of lost the plot here. So it's not even like this is this isn't even in an average power play. This is a bad power play going into what is a decent power play spot. So like Michelli's on the top unit, Cooley's on the second unit. Like they're all split up. I don't have a lot of interest in Utah. I'm going to be honest. I don't mind Boston one here. And one of the reasons I don't mind Boston one is that they're not coming in with the same ownership that they had been. Like, 12.5% ownership on a slate this size, I think is fine. Zacha and Pasternak have been generating a lot more quality without Elias Lindholm on their line. They're up to 2.8 expected goals per 60. It's not great, but it is good. Pasternak's still having some trouble generating shot quality of his own, but the shot rate has generally been fine. At 15,900, like they're priced in a spot where you can play them. If you want to go geeky, put in Marchand because Utah does take a fair share of penalties. I think that's okay. I think Boston one is in play here tonight. They're not a priority necessarily for me. I will also say it's Carl Vejmelka starting tonight. It's not Connor Ingram. Connor Ingram's hurt. Looks like he's going to be out for like maybe a week or something like that. Vejmelka's actually been pretty good this season, whereas Connor Ingram's been pretty bad. If Vejmelka doesn't fall flat on his face, this isn't a great matchup for Boston either because Utah's not that bad. Is actually good defensively. So if anything, it's a Boston top line. I'll always say a David Pasternak one-off is in play, but generally speaking, this game's not really a high priority for me in single entry.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a cold day in hell the day we are very enthusiastic about Boston, at least according to my DMs. But let's move on. Vegas Golden Knights with a 2.9 total heading into Ottawa. The Senators have a 3.5. Ottawa loading up their top line, going Brady Tkachuk, Timmy Stützle, Drake Batherson. Second line of Josh Norris, Claude Giroux, Ridley Grieg. Third line of Pinto Beans, David Perron, and Michael It's-A-Me Amadio. I actually like that third line. Like, oh man, maybe I could power play stack something and stack them. And then I logged in and I was like 8.1% projected ownership on Ottawa 3 tonight. What are we doing? But they're 8,600. It makes sense. I am interested in Ottawa 1 here. Brady Tkachuk, Stützle, Batherson. They're 20,000 on the nose. 13.7% top 2 stack, 8.1% projected ownership. It's twofold why I like them. One, actually, there's 3 reasons. One, it's back-to-back on the road for Vegas. 2, Eichel, Dorofeyev, and Barbashev have been extremely high event at both ends of the ice. They trade chances. And 3, it's Ilya Samsonov in net, and he hasn't been good. There's a shocker. Now, Vegas just doesn't take penalties, and that's the one reason that would give me pause to spend $20,000 on a line here tonight. But when they do take them, they have trouble killing them, and they are back-to-back on the road, so maybe they are a bit more sloppy. They're kind of in that range where it's tough to play them, but getting them on a 10-game slate with positive leverage, fully correlated, back against a team back-to-back on the road with their backup goalie, I am interested in Ottawa 1 here. They have a 3.5 total. I was a bit shocked to see that total. But again, I try not to have an argument with Vegas because Vegas usually wins. If you want to go to Ottawa 2 as a filler, Norris, Giroux, Grieg, I think that's fine. Hurdle, Roy have been decent. Nothing spectacular on the defensive end. I honestly think this is an Ottawa 1. The Vegas side, I don't have a ton of interest. Like, I know Hamonic got moved down to he is out. But, like, taking Hamonic out and putting Jacob Bernard-Docker in, they might actually have 3 competent pairs to go with a already good, decently defensive line. So if anything, I'd go to Hurdle and Roy because they're cheap and that'll let you get in a more expensive stack. But really, I don't have a ton of interest in Vegas here.
Yeah, I also do like Ottawa 1 here. They haven't played a ton together over the last couple of years, but they are over 100 minutes. Batherson, Stützle, and Tkachuk in those 105 minutes together. 77 shot attempts, 3.2 expected goals, 4.5 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5. Those are really good numbers. You talked about Eichel and Dorofeyev trading chances. 3 expected goals for per 60, 3.1 against per 60. Like that's almost like the very definition of trading chances. I do think it's a good matchup for that Ottawa top line at 5-on-5. You know, Tkachuk is still shooting well. They're all correlated together on the power play. You know, Stützle gets, 20 to 21 minutes. The wingers will get less, but Stützle plays quite a bit. They'll be on the ice. At the very least, Tkachuk and Stützle will be on the ice with the empty net if there's a situation like that. So I do like Ottawa 1 here. Now, they are $20K. That is expensive. They're in line. We'll talk about Colorado later. They're in line with the Colorado top 2 lines. They're in line with the Rangers. They're in line with Edmonton's top line. So there is competition. There are other options in that price range, but at a 3.5 total, and maybe Vegas does not take a lot of penalties. You're right. I was looking over the last month. They're at 1.8 times shorthanded per game. The league average is like 3.1 or something like that, maybe a little less. So they don't take penalties, but their penalty kill is not good. And I think Ottawa's power play, while overheating, has largely been good. So they can go 1 for 2 on the power play here tonight pretty easily. So I do like Ottawa 1. They are definitely one of the lines that I'm considering here tonight. I think Ottawa 2 is also in play. The thing is like, I think this is a situation where I'd want to get some power play players in, because Vegas's penalty kill has been so bad. Even if they don't take a lot of penalties, it's kind of like Minnesota Wild, New York Islanders situation. So I do think that the depth from Ottawa is fine if you're paying up for an expensive line elsewhere, but even considering price, it is the top line that I'm veering towards in this game. On the Vegas side, like Roy and Hurdle, you're right. They have actually been good together. It's not a big sample. It's a little over 45 minutes, but those 45 minutes, 79 shot attempts, 3.4 expected goals per 60. Hurdle has been getting better shot quality over his last 5 or 6 games. It happens to coincide with him getting Nicholas Roy as a line mate, let's say, because Hurdle's been moved to the wing at times. They're both on the top power play unit. Ottawa's penalty kill has not been that good. You know, I do think there is a little bit of merit to going to Vegas too here, where they're only 12K. Nobody's playing them. I mean, it is back-to-back on the road, but you're talking about going from Toronto to Ottawa. Like it's like a 3-hour drive. It's maybe like a 20-minute flight. Like it's nothing to really worry about. So I do think Vegas 2 is playable as a filler here tonight. But it's Ottawa 1 that really is drawing my interest in this game, and they are definitely one of the lines I'm considering in my lineup tonight.
Yeah, I do like Ottawa 1 here. I'm a big Ottawa slappy for DFS, though. New York Islanders with a 3.1 total heading into Detroit. The Wings have a 2.9 total. These Detroit lines are an absolute abomination. They should be ashamed of themselves. Larkin, Raymond, Tarasenko, DeBrincat, Kane, Marco Kasper. I don't know what they're searching for, but they're probably not going to find it with these combinations. So normally I don't really like playing chalk Islanders, but their ownership on a 10-game slate honestly isn't terrible. And Nelson Palmieri Sipilkov is 13.5 with a 3.5% top 2 stack, 10.1% projected ownership. Like, that's negative leverage, but it's not to the point where it's like the other night they were like 19% projected. And that Nelson Palmieri Sipilkov line has been the better line. They're cheaper. They avoid the Larkin and Raymond, whatever that means. Like, Tarasenko's on that line. He's one of the worst defensive forwards in the NHL. But like, there's no planet where Marco Kasper, Patrick Kane, and Alex DeBrincat are good defensively either. So, and you're going to avoid the top pair for whatever that's worth. So, like, I like Nelson Palmieri Sipilkov here. It's a very good power play matchup as well. So if you do want to get in, your Bo Horvats of the world, I think that's fine. But I would lean towards Nelson Palmieri Sipilkov. On the Detroit side, I don't have a ton of interest here. Like, the Islanders' penalty kill is bad, but they don't take a lot of penalties. I don't think I'd full stack anything. I have no faith that these lines are going to stick together. If anything, I do like a one-off DeBrincat, one-off Raymond, one-off Kane, something like that. But, like, my God, these lines, just throw them in the garbage and pick from a hat. So I'm in on the Islanders here, not so much on the Wings.
Yeah, it's tough because we definitely don't have a sample with Marco Kasper because he's generally been playing, even after he got called up because he didn't start the season on the team. He's generally been playing on the third and fourth line a lot with Tarasenko. Obviously, they're not on the same line now, so we don't have a huge sample. I will say, I was looking at the DeBrincat and Kane's numbers over the last couple of years, basically since Kane got there. They haven't been that bad defensively, like about league average. I think a lot of that time was with JT Compher. Compher is, not a bad defensive center. I was looking at some of the defensive impacts this season. Like Marco Kasper has been better defensively than he has been offensively. So like I could see that line being passable. I think the bigger problem for Detroit isn't necessarily whether that line will be bad defensively. It's whether Ben Sherratt, Jeff Petrie, Albert Johansson, and Eric Gustafsson are going to be bad defensively, because I don't have a lot of faith in those defense pairs. I'll tell you that much. So I do think that's where my interest for the Islanders comes from. Like that Edmondson Cedar pairing has been legitimately great for Detroit. Like that's kind of the one thing that has stood out for them this season. Aside from the power play, is that they're up to 215 minutes together. Their expected goals against per 60 is under 2. And their actual goals against per 60 is at like 1.1. Like it's legitimately been like a, Jonas Brodin, Jared Spurgeon type pairing so far this season. So that's what's kind of keeping me away from that Horvat line, is like, I do think it's a bad matchup going against that Detroit defensive pair. Once you get past that pair, there is nothing to worry about. So I think I agree with you on Islanders too. It would be Nelson, Palmieri, and Siplikov, even with that ownership, because they do fit in with those 20K lines that we were talking about earlier. They do, Ottawa, Colorado, Florida, Edmonton, what have you. You can fit them in with those lines. So I do like Islanders too. They're perfectly correlated on the power play. Detroit's penalty kill is abhorrent. Now, it should be said the Islanders' power play is as bad as the Detroit penalty kill is. Something's got to give. I will bet on the line that has been playing well this year, 3.1 expected goals, 3.3 actual goals. So Islanders 2 for me. On the Detroit side, like, I think if anything, it would be the Larkin, Raymond, Tarasenko line, just because I do think they play with Edmondson and Cedar a fair bit. Larkin and Raymond have been able to generate goals at times. They've been a lot better with Alex DeBrincat. Maybe Tarasenko can give them something. I do think that Detroit one line, because they're under 15K, is in play. But I'm going to be honest, I'd rather just go a little bit cheaper and go play that Islanders 2 line. So I think I kind of agree here that it's the Islanders for me, and specifically the Nelson line.
Yep, we are in agreement there. Carolina, a 3.1 total. Heading into New Jersey, the Devils have a 3.3. This is actually a pretty interesting game. I don't have a ton of interest in Carolina. They played yesterday. Svechnikov got moved down to the third line in that game. Martinook moved up. And then the Carolina fourth line played more minutes than the Kotkaniemi line. You take that for what it's worth. You don't know if Martinook's going to start on Carolina 3 or on Carolina 1. You're going into New Jersey. They're rested. They have a legitimately good defensive team. I know Carolina has a 3.1 road total. That's nothing to sneeze at, but like I don't think I would full stack anything. If anything, it would be one-offs. But like if they're going to mix up their lines again, and that's an unknown, it's just Devils are good defensively. They have a good penalty kill. So really, like if you have a one-off you like, that's fine. But I'm probably out on Carolina here. My interest would be on the Devils side, and it would specifically be the Hughes, Bratt, Palat line. I think you can go to Heischer, Myers, and Nason, but what I'm worried about is Netjes, Kotkaniemi, and Robertson not playing a ton of minutes, and that line by default seeing a fair bit of that Stahl, Martinook, Carrier line because of that. I know Hughes, Bratt, Palat are going to go out for the most part against the Aho line. And while that line has been very good offensively, if it's Svechnikov there, they're nothing to fear defensively. I I kind of have some interest in Hughes Brat Plot at 17.5. They have a little bit of positive leverage with a 6.1% top two stack. It's just, they're kind of priced in a range where I'm going to be building. You know what I mean? Like there's lines 20K and up again that I like here tonight. You can't really fit them with Colorado. So like while I like that Hughes line, they're kind of in a mid-range build for me. That they'd be a line that I put with like, a Boston 1, an Islanders, a Detroit 1 if you happen to get there. You know what I mean? Like the Sharks, something like that. It's just hard to price them in if you're looking to play Tampa. If you're looking to play minute, I don't know if I'm going to prioritize them in single entry just off the way I'm building, but I do like that Hughes line tonight.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how those matchups are going to work out. New Jersey's last home game was against San Jose. Which top line is San Jose's is always a question. Their game before that was against Montreal, and they sent out Hischier like 80% of the time against the Suzuki line. So I do wonder if they're not going to use Hischier again here tonight against Aho. I'm not super concerned about that, generally speaking. Like the 5-on-5 matchups, I don't think matter as much as the special teams matchups, because a lot of New Jersey's value so far this season has come because of the power play. Like Jack Hughes has gotten it's something like 42 or 43% of his points on the power play so far this season. Nico Hischier has gotten like 40% of his production on the power play this season. The power play has been very important, and we know how good the Carolina penalty kill is. It is arguably the best in the league. Carolina's penalty kill, second fewest shot attempts per minute, third fewest shots against per minute, second fewest goals against per minute. Like, it's just a brutal, brutal power play matchup for New Jersey. And so they have to get there at 5-on-5. The Hischier-Meyer-Nason line has been a lot better with Stefan Nason there. 3.4 expected goals for, 1.4 against. It's a little worrisome that I'm seeing some articles about Timo Meier and a back problem. It makes me wonder, like, do they cut back his minutes? Is he as effective as he normally is? Does it really matter at all? Like, I think that's what kind of worries me. So, like, I would probably go to Hischier, Meyer, and Nason here just because I do think they have been playing extremely well. They aren't that expensive. They're coming in with lower ownership, 1.2% ownership. But just generally speaking, I think this game would be a little bit more of an MME 20 max game for me than it would be single entry. On the Carolina side, what I will say is that Carolina has done this a couple times already this year where they've moved Jordan Martin up to the top line, and then the very next game they just put Jack Roslovic back. I think they're just looking for kind of a spark last night. Now, thankfully, it's one of the early games to lock, so we'll know ahead of time. New Jersey also has a really good penalty kill. Like, if anything from Carolina, I would go back to that Carolina top line as Svechnikov, Aho, and Roslovic. I'm going to be honest, I just do not have a ton of interest in full stacking anything from this game. I do think Jack Hughes as a one-off perfectly fine. If you want to go to Stefan Nason because he's still reasonably cheap and he's been getting more ice time at 4,200, I think that's perfectly fine. If you want a one-off Svechnikov, I think that's perfectly fine. Natchez, obviously. As far as full stacking a line goes here tonight, I think I'm just going to look elsewhere.
Yeah, that is certainly fair. Let's move on to the next one here. Excuse me. Colorado Avalanche with a 0.4 total. Heading into Washington, the Capitals have a 3 total. Alex Ovechkin out. He is week to week. I think it was his foot or ankle. It's got to be deflating for that whole team, to be honest. Like, I don't know. He was going for Gretzky's record. the way he was playing, he might have gotten it this season just because like he's shooting like 9,000,000% on the empty net. But anyway, Washington going Strome, Protas, Andrew Mangiapane, Wilson, McMichael, Dubois. That's really the only lines of note. Colorado going McKinnon, Lehkonen, Drouin, Rantanen, Nichushkin, Middlestat. Of note on the Colorado side, they moved Lehkonen off the top power play and moved Johnny Drouin on. I was surprised that it wasn't Nichushkin going on. I think the next step is to take Drouin off and get Nichushkin on. This is I'll start with Washington because that's a little bit easier to break down. Strome and Protas have pretty good numbers together, but most of that was with Alex Ovechkin. And I think I could speak for Cliffy too. We're both Andrew Mangiapane guys. He is nowhere near the goal scorer Alex Ovechkin is, even at this point of Ovechkin's career. I do worry about that line. Who's going to finish? Like, Strome's having a very good season. It's still baffling to me that Chicago just didn't tender him an offer. And now he's a top line center on a playoff team, but that's neither here nor there. For Washington, it would just be going back to McMichael, Wilson, Dubois. They're 14-8. They're coming in with right on their top 2 stack percentage. They're going to avoid the McKinnon matchups. They'll see middle 6. Like the Middlestat, Rantanen, and Nichushkin matchup might not be very good. But Kivi Ranta, Ivan, Logan O'Connor season, and a shameless plug. Cliffy did write about him for his other site. I did see the article up. You can go check it out on his Twitter. But that would be the line that I'd be interested on the Washington side. On the Colorado side, there's still 2 guys on each of the top line, 2 guys on the top power play unit on each line. I'm not concerned about the matchups coming back at me on the Washington side. Like, yeah, like maybe they see Nick Dowd, maybe they see Lars. It doesn't really affect me. So it's kind of where do you want to go? I think to save $900, I would go to McKinnon, Lehkonen, and Drouin. They're $900 cheaper. They have the higher top 2 stack. Now they do have a bunch more ownership. So if you're looking to get, I guess, a little contrarian while getting exposure to Colorado, I have no issue going to Middlestat, Rantanen, and Nichushkin. I just tend to go towards McKinnon here. I know we were on the Rantanen line the other night, but tonight for me, it's McKinnon, Lehkonen, and Drouin. Part of me does worry that Nichushkin may end up on the top power play unit at some point, and that second line would become fully correlated, but that's just a fear that I have in my head. So for right now, it would be the McKinnon line and it would be the McMichael
line. I do think the McMichael, Dubois, Wilson line is interesting because they are still reasonably cheap, right? 14,800, 1.7 top 2 stack, 1.6% ownership. It's still a 3 total, even without Ovechkin, which I think is fairly notable. You look across the slate, I think Boston was at like a 3.1. So like even without Ovechkin, they're basically treating this and Colorado in town mostly healthy. They're still treating this as Washington has a fairly good chance of putting up some goals here. That line has been really, really good this season. 3.2 expected goals, 4.5 expected goals, shooting 12.6%. I did write about McMichael. The crux of the article was that basically at every level, whether you look at junior, whether you look at AHL, his rookie NHL season or this year, like he does a very good job of creating from that home plate area in front of the net, whether right in front of the net or in the middle slot area. He is very good at getting dangerous shots off, and he's very good at creating off the rush. And if you can do those 2 things, you're going to find success as a goal scorer in the NHL. And he can do those 2 things. I do wonder if the power play, if they just plug Pierre-Luc Dubois on the top power play, whether they have different combinations. Does Mangiapane just take Ovechkin's role? Like those types of things. I do think there's a chance that McMichael, Dubois, and Wilson becomes fully correlated again. Remember, it was Dubois that started the season on the top power play unit. So I do think there's a chance that that Washington line is perfectly correlated here tonight. It is a 3 total. They have been very good. Maybe they see more minutes without Ovechkin tonight, right? Like, I don't think that the minutes bump is going to come. Like, maybe the Dowd line sees a little bit more ice time as well, but I don't think, like, Jakub Vrana and Lars Eller are going to see huge minutes bumps. I think it's going to be that McMichael line. Like, they could be a 20-plus minute line here tonight. So I kind of do like them in this matchup. They would be the line I would go to. On the Colorado side, the one thing that keeps worrying me about that Colorado top line, like, it is nice that Drouin is on the top power play unit. It makes me wonder how much value Arturi Lehkonen really has now if he's not getting power play time. The other thing is Nathan McKinnon's shot rate. Like, we talked about it on the last show. He's at 3.6 shots per game this year, with averaging a career high 23-something in ice time per game. Over the last 2 years, he was over 5 shots per game. Right? Like, his shot rate has gone down a lot, even with the ice time bump. And now the ice time has been coming back down since everybody's gotten healthy. He's been closer to like that 22 and a half minute mark. So, Drouin, he's not a shooter. McKinnon is shooting less. Lehkonen off the power play. Like, I would probably go to Rantanen and Nichushkin in Middlestat again, I think. One, like, they'll mostly avoid Nick Dowd, which is always a plus. 2, you still get 2 out of the 3 on the top power play unit. 3, they're coming in with no ownership, under 1%. And in years gone by, that would have scared me to stack Colorado without Nathan McKinnon. But if Nathan McKinnon is going to cut 30% off his shot rate, he's not the same guy that he was last year or the year before. And that's why I don't feel as bad about it. So, I think it's Rantanen and Nichushkin Middlestat that I like best on the Colorado side. They are certainly in play for me, but I do think that McMichael, Dubois, Wilson line is a very nice mid-priced line here tonight that could end up fully correlated on the power play with a 3 total at home. I kind of like that combination.
Yep. Oh, internet buffering. Internet struggling. But let's get to the next one. Tampa Bay Lightning with a 3-hour. Blue Jackets have a 2.9 total. Can you hear me okay? Or am I just as long as you can hear me, I don't care. But
it is cutting out a bit, but not nothing you can do.
And nothing I can do about it. Braden Point and Nick Paul missed practice yesterday. Nick Paul is already confirmed out. They practiced yesterday. Hagel, Sorelli, Kucherov, Gensel, Geeky, Gonclaves. That leads me to believe that they expect Braden Point to be out tonight. That's something you need to keep an eye on at warmups. They had an optional this morning. Also, Vasilevsky was on the ice for the optional. So I don't even know if he's starting tonight. That is important. Our boy Ken Johnson is back for Columbus tonight. Columbus going Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov, Fantilli, Johnson, Van Riemsdyk, Chinnikov, Sillinger, Olivier. It's kind of hard to know what to do with Tampa until we get a status update on Braden Point, because if he's out, Hagel, Sorelli, Kucherov, I would have interest in. Now I'm expecting him out, but they haven't, they asked Cooper and all Cooper said was Nick Paul's out. But the way they practice leads me to believe he's going to be out. I do have interest in Hagel, Sorelli, and Kucherov. we'll just have to wait and see. I would have some swaps ready if you are using that line. It's a good power play matchup. Cirelli isn't on the top unit, but Hagel and Kucherov are. So that would be the line for me on Tampa. On the Columbus side, as much as I want to play Ken Johnson here tonight, and I still might because he's on the top power play unit, my interest is on Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov. They're $100 cheaper than that Caps McMichael line, and they're coming in with 2.1% projected ownership. That line has been good all season. They spend most of their time with Werenski. Yes, that Hagel-Cirelli combo has been good, but with Kucherov, they are much worse defensively. It honestly could be Jonas Johansson tonight. We don't know. But as it stands, I do have interest in Columbus 1 here. You want to go to Columbus 2 for the Kent Johnson narratives. Like, as much as I want to, I think I'm going to go to Columbus 1. So both top lines, but just pay attention to the news, specifically Braden Point and specifically who's in net for Tampa.
Yeah, what I will mention is that if Point is not playing, like Cirelli's probably, especially with Nick Paul out, Cirelli's probably going to be on the top power play unit. So Cirelli, Hagel, Kucherov would probably be fully correlated. And that line would be, I think it's 20,700, 20,500. So a fully correlated Nikita Kucherov line with Brandon Hagel on the other wing at under 21K seems like a good spot to me. So the notable thing about Tampa Bay here is like they have a massive total, and it's not like Point and Paul possibly missing the game would be a surprise because neither of them were at practice yesterday. I've noticed the over-under hasn't really moved all day, and if it is Hagel, Cirelli, Kucherov, again, that would probably be a perfectly correlated top line in a game where the team has a 3.6 total, and I think it would be a somewhat low-owned line. So at least certainly compared to their top two stack probability. So I don't like stacking against our Columbus boys, but that feels like a combination that'd be too good. That'd be too good to kind of let go. So we'll wait to see what warm-up brings. I would certainly have Cirelli, Hagel, and Kucherov in my mix here tonight, assuming that is a line. They were really good without Braden Point at 5-on-5. They're at 3 expected goals, 4.8 actual goals per 60. So I do like Tampa 1 here tonight. Whether it's Point or not. I agree. I do like going back to our Columbus boys here. Voronkov was moved to the top power play unit, so it's a perfectly correlated top line. Kent Johnson's also on the top power play units, like Fantilli and Sillinger, those guys down to power play too. So it's a perfectly correlated top line at home at 14,700 with ownership coming in at about 2%. And we know how good Marchenko and Monahan have been this year. Marchenko and Voronkov specifically at 3 expected goals per 60 so far this season. I think they can create very, very well at 5-on-5 in any matchup. You mentioned that Kucherov makes the top line worse defensively, and he does. And I'm not worried about the depth matchups after that. So I think it's a pretty good matchup across the board for Columbus 1. In that 14 to 16K price range, I think they are one of the top lines that I would use. So I really do like going to Columbus 1 here. Not as interested in the depth as I otherwise would be. I think this is a game where I'm looking at the top lines and not necessarily the depth. We'll see what the Tampa Bay warm-up looks like. But yes, both those top lines, I have a lot of interest in here tonight.
Yes. Me too. Let's get to, excuse me, the main event of the evening. I'm very conflicted about this game. Hopefully my internet holds up for it. San Jose Sharks with a 2.5 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have a 3.6 Blues going Kyrou, Thomas, Buchnevich, Shen, Neighbor, Saad. As far as we know, the Sharks going Granlund, Zetterlund. Maybe they make a line with Celebrini and Toffoli with not Goudreau, but we'll see. Blues, here's why I'm conflicted. On one end, you have Kyrou, Thomas, Buchnevich, a line that I always have interest in. They're priced at $16,100. When they were going last year, they were in the 19s at times. They have a 10.9% top two stack, but 19% projected ownership. It is a great matchup, back-to-back on the road against the Sharks. The issue is Yaroslav Askarov is starting for the Sharks, and he is legitimately one of the best goalie prospects in the world. I was looking for the tweet from the preseason when he got traded. I couldn't find it, but there's comparables to his start in the AHL, his draft pedigree and whatever, and all those guys are legit starters in the NHL. This guy is legit. His numbers in the AHL this season have been excellent. I'm kind of in a rock and a hard place here because at one end, I love the Thomas Buchnevich-Kyrou matchup. If it was anyone other in net, I'd say we're full sending. I don't care the ownership. I have a little bit of pause at that ownership with Askarov in net because Askarov legitimately could steal this game. Now, Askarov could have a good game and St. Louis still gets, that line still gets a couple. And then you're kind of in the point where Askarov didn't kill you, but the Buchnevich line didn't do enough to win a GPP. And that's kind of where I'm at this game. I still think they'll still get theirs, at least one or two goals, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to be a GPP winning performance. And if it's not going to be enough to win a GPP, do I really want to have a line at 20%? Especially a Blues line, you know what I mean? So I'm leaning towards fading them in single entry because of the ownership and because of Askarov. Now, if you want to play them, I have no qualms. None. This is my favorite iteration of the Blues line. This is their only good line. They're fully correlated, a great power play spot. I'm just hoping that Askarov can do enough to where this Thomas line at that ownership doesn't break the slate. On the flip side, if it is Granlund, Zetterlund, Eklund, they're $1,100 cheaper, coming in with a tenth of the ownership. This Blues team is not good. I would have interest in that Sharks line at that ownership against this Blues team. So honestly, in single entry, I am going to give more thought to the Granlund, Zetterlund, Eklund line. I don't know if I'm going to get there, but they're in play for me if I can fit them in with a little bit more expensive line. Again, no issues with St. Louis 1. I'm just hoping Askarov can do enough for them not to break the slate if I'm going to fade them in single entry. My interest would be the Sharks top line, assuming they're together at that minimal ownership compared to them.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything against playing or reasons for not playing St. Louis here tonight. This is the best iteration of that top line over the last couple of years. 2.8 goals per 60 at 5-on-5. It's not an elite number, but it's above average, and being above average offensively on this St. Louis team over the last 14 months is a miracle. So they are perfectly correlated on the power play. San Jose does not have a good penalty kill, all those things. So not going to say, obviously, I'm not going to say don't play St. Louis. Here's the thing is that in that 14 to 16K-ish price range, we already talked about Washington 1. We already talked about Columbus 1. Those Islanders lines are in that price range. We'll get to the Rangers a little bit later. There are a number of lines in this price range that I think are very playable that are going to come in at under 5% ownership whereas this Blues line is probably going to be 20% or above in some single entries. So like, if I can get, the McMichael line, which has been one of the best 5-on-5 lines in the league, at least offensively this season, at a quarter or a fifth or a sixth of the ownership of St. Louis, like, I'm gonna do it. So it's, for me, it's just an ownership thing. I just think that there's way too much here for a St. Louis team that sucks. We could talk about how bad, we could talk about how bad the Sharks are, and the Sharks are not good. What if I told you this? What if I told you the St. Louis Blues have a lower goal share so far this season than the Sharks? Okay, the Sharks are 41.6% goal share. The Blues are at 41.5%. The Sharks, by share of goals scored, have been better than the Blues. So do I want to play that line at like 20% plus? No. It's one of those things where, like, I'm not going to say don't play them, because they are in a good spot at home, perfectly correlated with a reasonable price. This team sucks, and I'm not sure that they're that much better than San Jose is. I would rather play the Sharks here. I would, assuming that Eklund, Zetterlund, and Granlund are back together. They're $15K. They're coming in at a tenth the ownership that St. Louis line will. They're perfectly correlated. They've been generating well offensively, 4 goals per 60 at 12.6% shooting. It's a little bit high, but they play a ton of minutes as well. At least Granlund and Eklund will. And St. Louis doesn't have a good penalty kill either. I would rather play San Jose here, assuming that line is together. We're going to have to watch for warm-ups because we don't know exactly what the line combinations are going to be. But if Granlund, Zetterlund, and Eklund are back together, or if either of Celebrini or Toffoli are on that top line with any of those 3 guys, that's what I have interest in this game. If the Blues burn me, they burn me. I don't think they're nearly as good as they're being made out to be, even with Robert Thomas back in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, they're good for the Blues. You put them on a Stanley Cup winning team, they're probably the second line.
I mean, they're a good line. Don't get me wrong, but are they 10
Florida
times?
Panthers.
Are they 10 times better than the Granlund, Zetterlund, Eklund line, which is what the ownership would indicate? I would say absolutely the fuck not. Are you kidding me? Not on this team.
Nothing gets Cliffy going like the St. Louis Blues. But he's right. Florida Panthers with a 3.5 total. Heading into Chicago, the Hawks have a 2.4. I'll make it quick on the Chicago side. I'm out. Florida's a little bit more interesting because they're going Barkov, Reinhart, Rodriguez, Kachuk, Verhaeghe, Bennett. Verhaeghe, Bennett line is now under 20K. They're getting priced more to where they should be. They were like 21-7 for a while there, playing 17 minutes a night. Under 20K, it's starting to get into a range where it's not awful to play them. And I kind of prefer that Bennett, Verhaeghe, Kachuk line tonight. Like, yeah, Barkov is good, but like since Barkov came back, that line really hasn't been great. Now, maybe Chicago Blackhawks is just what the doctor ordered and they just absolutely run them out of the building. But I don't mind Bennett, Verhaeghe, Kachuk at 19.8 here. The issue is, like, I like that Tampa line better. That's right around that price. I like the Ottawa top line better for right around that price. So, I know this is an unbelievably good matchup, but I'm leaning towards this being an MME type deal for Florida for me. I'm still a little bit worried about Kachuk's minutes, so for those reasons, like I'm going to prioritize other teams. But again, if you want to play the Florida Panthers here, I'll never say no. Both the lines have positive leverage. They're in a unbelievably good spot, and I would have them if I was building probably 5 lineups, but I'm only building 1, and I like other spots a little bit better. But this is definitely a Florida game for me.
Yeah, nothing on Chicago either. I do like the Tkachuk line here, and it is a price thing. It is because they have come down under 20K, 19,800. It's still a little high for what their ice time could be. 17, 18 minutes. It's not a lot. But assuming Jason Dickinson and Joey Anderson go out against Barkov for the most part, that leaves Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, and Bennett against the middle 6 from Chicago, which like they're bad. That Tkachuk line, 3.4 expected goals, 4.9 actual goals per 60. They've been tremendous. Verhaeghe and Tkachuk both on the power play. Yes, ice time is a concern, but it's like in that price range, assuming it's Hagel, Cirelli, Kucherov, like I would in Tampa Bay, I'd rather play Florida. I'd rather play Florida than any of the Colorado lines. I'd rather play Florida than Vegas. In that price range, for me, basically comes down to the Tkachuk line in Ottawa, the Tkachuk line in Florida, and the Edmonton top line. So that's kind of what it is for me, because Florida's power play with Balinskis there has been very good. Now, Chicago's penalty kill has generally been good this season, but Florida is drawing a ton of power plays, like 3.5 per game. It's one of the most in the league over the last month of the season. So if they get 3-4 power plays here tonight, I'd like their chances to, get at least 1 on the board. And I do think that Tkachuk line can run all over the second and third lines for Chicago. So I really do like Florida 2 here. They're the line that I would target. They are certainly in consideration for me at single entry, especially where they're being priced down here.
That is a fair argument, one that I might need to consider. New York Rangers with a 3.2 total heading into Calgary. The Flames have a 2.7. Rangers, I didn't see Philip Hedl was not on the ice for morning skate, so they're probably going to run back Trocheck, Panarin, Lafreniere, Kreider, Zibanejad, Riley Smith, Cooley, Kako, Johnny Brzezinski. So I was wrong about that Rangers third line the other night. It doesn't really matter who the center is for Cooley and Kako. They're just running everyone over. Don't mind them as a cheap 2-man if you're looking to power play stack some stuff. Like, there's nothing that worries me on the Flame side. Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere would be my preferred line on the Rangers, though, at 20,600, 8.8% top 2 stack, only 1.5% projected ownership. I think they're just priced in a weird range, right? I prefer both Tkachuk lines. I prefer Edmonton. I prefer Tampa here. Like, they're fine. Don't get me wrong. I just prefer other spots. I think Zibanejad, Kreider, Smith is interesting because their price keeps going down. They're at 14.9. They're in that bucket with Columbus 1, the Sharks top line, the McMichael line. Like, I would much prefer to play the McMichael line or Columbus 1. But I do think there's some merit to going Zibanejad, Kreider, Smith here. They're only getting 1.7% projected ownership. While I prefer the other 2 lines in that price range, I still do like Zibanejad, Kreider, Smith. Like, I do like the Rangers here a lot. I just prefer other spots. On the Calgary side, like, I don't particularly love anything. I'm maybe one off a Coronado, one off a Nazem Kadri, but I don't think I'd full stack anything.
Yeah, there's no interest for me for full stacking on the Calgary side. They've switched up their 5-on-5 lines. They switched up their power play. They're getting to that, start pushing the panic button part of the season. I think it's pretty indicated. It's a good indicator. I'll just go with that the entire top 2 stack percentage of Calgary here tonight is 2.8%. It's just because they're spread across 3 lines. They don't score very well. Like you said, I think like a one-off Sharangovich, one-off Zari, one-off Kadri, those things are fine. As far as full stacking goes, I don't have a lot of interest in Calgary. My interest is on the Rangers side. My interest is going back to the Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere line. It's just they continue to play well. Now, they didn't have a great game against Vancouver. They were fine against Vancouver, I thought, but they didn't really get the breaks. Like, those things happen. They still have a really good sample from this season, 3.5 goals per 60, shooting under 11%. So the shooting is shooting percentage is in check. Still skating 18 to 20 minutes. They're getting good ice time. So there's nothing that worries me from a defensive perspective on the Calgary side. And Calgary's penalty kill has been pretty bad basically since like the first week of the season. I do think that, for that reason, I would go to either of the Rangers' top two lines, like Cooley and Kakko two-man. Like if you're playing in expensive Tampa or Colorado or whatever, like I think that's fine. But I would probably try to get, if I'm stacking out of the Rangers here tonight, I would probably try to get the power play guys in, because this is a really good power play matchup for New York. Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere is where I'm focused specifically, especially where they broke up Backlund and Coleman. Like Calgary would use that duo quite a bit in a shutdown role, and they were pretty good. Now that they're broken up, like I do think a Backlund line will still be good defensively. I just don't think they will be as good. So there aren't really any matchup concerns either at 5-on-5 or on the power play for me for Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere. So I think that's where my attention would go. But like you said, there are lines in that price range. We just went over Florida. We mentioned the Ottawa Kachuk line. You mentioned that as well. Like there are other lines in that price range that we do like to play here tonight. They're not necessarily a top priority for me. But of the two lines, I would go back to the Panarin line and leave Zibanejad, Kreider, and Smith to somebody else.
Yeah, I see Rangers fans in the chat complaining about Lindgren, Trouba. There's nothing you can do. They're going to play their minutes. They're going to be awful, and that's going to be that. They're probably the worst pair in the NHL, and they play 22 minutes a night. So, Lavalette just making it a little bit harder on himself. What an idiot. Minnesota Wild with a 2.7 total. Heading into Edmonton, the Oilers have a 3.3. Zach Hyman is out. He's hurt. He's out for about a week. That's been pretty bad to start this season, as my internet decides to power bomb me one more time. Edmonton going McDavid, Draisaitl, Podkolzin, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, not Hyman, Skinner, Nugent Hopkins, Kasperi Kapanen, Matthias Janmark, Adam Henry, Connor Brown. I don't even know why I read that third line. It really just doesn't matter. Minnesota's still loading that top line. The Minnesota top line at 23-4 is going to be the most expensive on the night, unless Braden Point is into have a ton of interest spending up that far in this matchup on this slate. They have a 2.7 total on the road, and they're 23,400. There's so many other spots in much better matchups with higher totals that I would have interest in. Never say no to a Kaprizov one-off, but I don't have a ton of interest in that Wild top line. Edmonton top line is a little bit more interesting to me. This is a pretty bad 5-on-5 matchup. It's a good power play matchup. Now, the Edmonton power play has been atrocious, but maybe putting Skinner on there with Hyman out will fix some ailments. I don't know, but
just to jump in quickly here, I don't think it's going to be Skinner. Because Hyman plays the net front, and the guy that plays the net front usually on the second power play is Corey Perry. So I think it's going to be McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Corey Perry power play.
Well, that doesn't really change much for me, because what I was going to say was, I'm never going to say no to a McDavid Draisaitl line, But in this matchup, I was kind of hoping for like 2-3%. They're coming in around 9% projected. And at that price, I'm just going to go play, Florida, go play Ottawa, go play the Rangers, et cetera, et cetera. I'm fine with them. It's just hard to prioritize them with some other lines priced in that range. So this is an MME game for me. I won't say no to McDavid, Draisaitl, Kaprizov, one-offs, but I don't think I'm going to full stack anything.
So here's the thing, is two things actually. One, Marc-Andre Fleury, not Philip Gustafson, is starting for Minnesota tonight. And there has been a pretty big gap between those two goalies this season. Gustafson, 925 save percentage, Fleury, 902. So Fleury around league average, Gustafson, one of the best goalies in the league. That makes a difference. The other thing is with Arvidsson out, with Hyman out, and with the team not really trusting Jeff Skinner, with Kasperi Kapanen being a big question mark, like this is lining up for another enjoy your 24 minutes of Mick Draisaitl here tonight. You know what I mean? This seems like they could play a lot of minutes. And when they play that many minutes, they don't necessarily hard match. And that could get Draisaitl, McDavid, and Puckholz away from that Eriksson Ek line quite a bit and into those second and third lines, which aren't necessarily that good defensively for Minnesota, especially with the injuries that they have. I do like Edmonton here for a couple reasons. One, because I do think the top line just plays a lot of minutes here tonight. Like they really just don't have other options. Like they were at the point where they're playing Jeff Skinner 10 minutes a night, and now he's on the second line. Like that's kind of where they're at right now. So I do like the Edmonton top line. Now they are in that price range, that 20K-ish price range that we've talked about with the Tkachuk line from Florida, with the Tkachuk line from Ottawa, with the Rangers line that we just talked about, with the Tampa top line, if it's Cirelli, Hagel, Kucherov. So there are a lot of options. But the Minnesota penalty kill is pretty bad. They do have their worst goalie in net. We know that Edmonton's top line is going to play a lot of minutes. I kind of like Edmonton one here. It's one of those things where they have a 3.3 total. If they get to like 4 goals, maybe Evan Bouchard goes nuts and Adam Henry gets one or something like that. But if they get to four plus goals here tonight, you got to figure that the big boys figure in pretty heavily. So where they're coming in, the ownership is high. It's better than it was the other night. About 12%. I don't know. I'm not saying I'm playing them for sure, but Edmonton, along with the two Tkachuk lines from Ottawa and Florida, are those expensive lines that I'm really considering here tonight. On the Minnesota side, the top line is just priced at a spot where I just think they're too expensive for the matchup. If you want to play them, go ahead. But like at 23,400, that screams to me like MME 20 max more than it does single entry. Like I would rather just take the savings and go play Edmonton, or take the savings and go play Tampa Bay, or take the savings, go play Ottawa or something like that. So for me, this is an Edmonton game, and I really do like that top line here tonight.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen here. Sorry again for my internet. I don't know what is going on. At the top of the board, we have Makar, Werenski, Hedman, Bouchard, Dobson, Rasmus Anderson, John Carlson, Dougie Hamilton, Jake Sanderson. I don't particularly love the top range. I think Hedman, Bouchard, and Dobson, like obviously Makar, is fine. I just don't think I can get him into my lineup at 8,500. If I'm playing Columbus, I would definitely consider pairing them with Werenski, but Hedman, Bouchard, Dobson would be the guys for me at the top range. But I'm probably not going to be living in that top range. I'm a notorious punt D-man, and Cliffy will take you through those.
Yeah, it's funny. 2 of the 3 expensive defensemen I like tonight are in the same game. Hedman for Tampa, Werenski for Columbus. They're both projecting well on Stochastic here tonight. Obviously, Cale Makar, he's at the top of the board, but Werenski's not that far behind. and he's $1,100 cheaper, so his value is a lot higher. Noah Dobson is projecting well. I don't think Noah Dobson has been very good this year, and the Islanders' power play, it honestly hasn't mattered which unit. All of them are terrible. So, like, if I'm paying $6K plus for a defenseman, I'm probably going to play, Makar Werenski, certainly, Hedman, maybe Bouchard. Like, I don't know. If Noah Dobson burns me, he burns me. He's not a guy I am projecting well here tonight. In the mid-price range, I guess Justin Falk. It's like, can this guy please finally start doing something? It's a good matchup at home for him. Charlie McAvoy for Boston as well. If you don't want to play Falk, playing Parayko is an option. Jake Wallman on the other side of that game. Moritz Seider at home, top power play, I think is fine for Detroit. There are a lot of cheap guys. Like, if you're looking cheap, Dante Fabro, Ubas Balinskis. Balinskis still running the power play for Florida. Wyatt Kaiser getting more minutes for Chicago. Scott Perunovich. I've watched more St. Louis games than I'd care to admit this year, and it looks like he's improving basically every game. So I think Perunovich is fine. Mason Lowry has been getting more minutes with Hampus Lindholm out. Our boy, the Zub, still under 3K for Ottawa. He's fine. If you're looking to spend up a little bit, Brett Kulak is seeing more minutes with Darnell Nurse out. Gustav Forsling. Is the revenge narrative still in play for Forsling now that it's been like 3 years he hasn't been in Chicago or whatever it is, or 4 years? I don't even know anymore. But Forsling, Connor Murphy on the other side of that game. Timothy Liljegren still getting some power play time for San Jose. Declan Chisholm, his price has come up, but he's still only 3K. I think that's playable, especially where he got almost 18 minutes in that last game, and he's getting power play time.
Yeah, I missed that revenge narrative thing. My internet was just like, we'll skip that part. But let's talk about some goalies. If I'm spending up, it would be for Igor Shesterkin. Homer, I know. Whoa. But it would be Igor. I also don't mind Markstrom at 7,900, Sorokin at 7,800. In the mid-price range, like, there really isn't much that I like. Spending down, I think the two that I would strongly consider if I'm punting goalie are Dustin Wolf and Askarov. Again, goalie ownership doesn't matter, but I do worry a little bit about the shiny new toy, and his ownership will be inflated. But so Wolf, Askarov for spend down, Sorokin, Markstrom in that high sevens, and then Igor if I'm spending up.
Yeah, the two expensive goalies that stood out to me were Vasilevsky and Igor. I would rather play Igor, and he is projecting well amongst goalies on Stokastic here tonight. He has the third highest projection. He's one of the better point per dollar values. So, going to Igor, we always talk about how Calgary has a tough time generating quality, not necessarily quantity. Could be a good night for Igor again. So Igor, Vasilevsky, I do like the idea of playing Askarov here tonight. Against the Blues, shot volume is always a concern. At 7,100, I think it's palatable. Alex Lyon, I forget which pronunciation it is, but at home for 7,600 against the Islanders, Detroit has not been shy of giving up shots. The Islanders, they've been better scoring over the last week or so, but haven't been a great scoring team this year. As long as the Detroit penalty kill doesn't fall on its face, I think Lyon could have a good night. Also mentioned Peter Mrazek. He's back in net at home against Florida. It is a little scary because I think Florida could absolutely just pump the piss right out of Chicago here tonight. But if you're looking to spend down, I think Mrazek and Askarov are probably the two options I would look at.
Pump the piss. That's a good one. If I ever have to, I'm be like, yo, Nurse, let me pump the piss. But who you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to go back to that Florida game. I'm going to go to a guy that's really come into his own over the last few years. I'm going to Carter Verhaeghe.
That was, honest to God, my pick as well. But I will give you another pick. It pains me to say this as a Rangers fan. He did powerbomb Panarin, going Tom Wilson.
Ooh. I'm it's weird. I'm kind of excited for that, to watch that Caps Avs game tonight. I think that's, looking at the rest of the games, maybe Carolina and New Jersey, of course, can't ignore our Columbus boys, but I like that early slate. I like Washington here tonight.
Yeah, we will be back Saturday, a much needed day off for my voice and my internet. Apparently tomorrow, we will see you win a GPP so you can get fiber. This is the best. Honest to God, I have the most expensive possible fiber optic, nitrous, pumping gas internet that I have available in my area. It's just my area. I don't even know. I need like a Starlink or something. But anyway, we'll be back on Saturday. Good luck, everybody, and we'll see you then.
Good luck tonight, everyone.